Hello, Norman, over here, Norman J. Right? I am Joko, and this is a video response to your essay, your call for feedback, please. It was going to be a real quick one, because I do have the day off today, but I wasn't planning on this. Anyway, I'll get it done in an hour. But then I discovered this. Look at this. Kind of cool, huh? I figured I can, if I need more green screen, but then eventually I can, walk around your essays, point to particular sentences and say, oh. Anyway. So what do we got today? Well, said it's a two-part question, which are some of the most difficult types. Well, these kinds of questions, these two-part questions, can be tricky because you've been practicing various other types that like advantages, disadvantages, to what extent do you agree, disagree. And now this has two distinct questions that are will be challenging on their own, and you got to answer both of them. What is our question? Well, let's look at it and analyze it. Many people have problems managing their money. What skills does a person need to manage their money well? Okay, so the premise is not to be argued, and the premise is not to be discussed, really. It's to be mentioned. And the premise here is that people have problems managing their money in general. But then there's other people mentioned in there who should, well, it doesn't actually say teacher, but who should teach children everywhere. Now the other key words in here, it would be skills. Okay? Not characteristics, but skills. Well, introduction and BP1. To the introduction, shall we?
This is challenging for some people. There is a plethora of skills one need to have in order to properly control the money. At the same time, parents and schools ought to educate children on specializing this phenomenon.
Okay, well, that was interesting. Well, what do I think? All right, so, did I put a code? No, I don't think I did. The different colors. You'll get it pretty quick. Oh, there's the code right there. Let's see now. Let's move over. Let me put myself up here. And what do we got? Managing. Okay, so plethora. Do you know how much a plethora is? I think a plethora, if I'm not confusing it with a myriad, they're both ancient Greek words that nobody uses in real life. It's one of those words that teachers joke about that students put in their essays, a plethora. First of all, a plethora is a very large number. And even if it was used in everyday speech, or even in academic English, it's not a plethora. Hey, kitty, what are you doing? It's not a plethora of skills. It's like 4 or 5 at most, right? I mean, come on. You couldn't come up with a plethora of skills. Don't choose your vocabulary to try to show off. Common mistake. Instead, your vocabulary should mean what you want it to mean. There's a plethora of skills one need. Well, if it's a plethora, then it's singular. And with a singular noun, we use needs. So, 2 sentences, 1 grammar error, to need to have in order to properly control the money. Is control and manage the same thing? It's not. And the money? Here's one that you really need to learn. There's 7 big rules for articles. And I'm not saying you need to learn it, Norman. I mean, everybody needs to be aware that you don't use the with uncountable nouns, or plural, more specifically plural nouns, unless you have defined what you're talking about. Unless there's a specific group. And, if we're speaking in general, money, we don't use the. What money we're talking about. What money? So, in these cases, no article. So, control money. This is not the correct connector. At the same time. We use, at the same time, if we were telling a story, we would use it to discuss things that were happening simultaneously or in concurrence with one another. Or we use it by contrast to say, but, essentially, meaning I recognize this is true, but at the same time, while this is true, this other thing is true, which means but. And you don't use but, no, here. Don't use connectors that someone told you to use, that you think you know what they mean, that someone told you, put it here. Be aware of the function of the connector. Parents and schools ought to educate children on specializing. They should teach them to be accountants? Huh? Doing what? And here's another word, phenomenon, like plethora. It's a word that we joke about because you students, you use it too much. You don't know what it means, but you know that it should be in your essay somewhere. Got to have a phenomenon in there. Right, Kitty? Kitty's a phenomenon. Phenomenon is often unexplained. It's something that sort of happens by itself. People, like a social trend would be that, but managing finances being a challenge is not a phenomenon. It's just an aspect, not a phenomenon. All right, here's body paragraph 1. Let's have a listen. Starting with people.
People can skillfully manage their liquid assets if they know effective budgeting and techniques on conserving money. With regards to the former, having a schedule of all the expenses and incomes can deter anyone from splurging money on useless items. Doing this means a person will not spend the money extravagantly, and at the same time, he/she will have a record of how much has been saved till date. Besides, being thrifty is also sometimes a good method to manage your money. At present, people are splurging money on items useless for them. If people adopt the habit of thinking twice before purchasing a product, they will be better able to manage their finances. To conclude, although managing finances is difficult.
Okay. There's no connection between your introduction and your body paragraph. That's a lack of. You look in the band descriptors, and it says there's no connection between them. Right, so what did you finish the last part with? You finished it with, we look here, all right, on this phenomenon. All right, so they ought to educate. All right, so now we want to get back to, we want to introduce this paragraph by using a topic sentence, of course, but by prefacing that topic sentence with the last thing that we were talking about. This is a very organic way of doing it. Instead of saying, first of all, or to begin with, don't start with to begin with, or on one hand. It's definitely not on one hand, because these are two different questions. What kind of connector can we use? Well, not one of the standard ones. Instead, you need to specialize in what you're talking about here. Okay, so it ended with, at the same time, parents and schools ought to educate children on specializing this phenomenon. Parents and schools, right? In those schools, there are some proven techniques for money management. These include, and then these are the ways people manage money. Just a couple. So you connect it by, I'm getting too far to that. People can skillfully manage their liquid assets if they know effective budgeting and techniques on conserving money. All right, I suppose that's a topic sentence. It's a bit clunky. First of all, liquid assets means cash on hand and checking account stuff. Money is everything, is finances. And so, yeah, I'm really good with my long-term retirement account, but put $20 in my pocket and liquid assets is not a synonym. Liquid assets, budgeting techniques for conserving money. Now, there's a really interesting use of a conditional here. It's a first conditional, and it's actually a grammatically correct complex sentence. So that'll help. Good job. You've got your if clause, if they know effective budgeting, and techniques for conserving money. Isn't budgeting a technique for conserving money? It's confusing because if they know effective budgeting and techniques on conserving money, with regards to the former, budgeting, having a schedule, good language there, of all the expenses. Once again, it's a plural noun used when speaking in general. We're talking about cat. And income is an uncountable noun, so we can't have incomes. Now you get all judgmental. Okay, you're supposed to report, meaning like be neutral. Instead, can deter anyone from splurging money on useless items. What? Doing this means the person will not spend the money on spend money, not the money, extravagantly. And at the same time, again, you're repeating a connector. We use for that. Now, what is this essay about? Why people have problems? Is this essay about how people waste money? That's not the question. The question is, what skills do they need to have to not do these things? Not what tendencies do they need to have to do them? Useless items, which you repeat again and again. Of course, they'll have a record. And saving, if they're splurging money, they're not saving. Besides is not a correct connector here. Besides is also used to describe contrast, okay? Or even it means almost moreover. But don't say moreover. It means leaving this. On top of this, there's also that. Besides, being thrifty is not a skill. No. Being thrifty is a characteristic. It is a personality trait. Okay? You see the difference? Skills and traits and qualities. And so it's not a method. Of course it's a... Oh, wait. Oh. Well, okay. So going back down to the bottom. If people adopt the habit of thinking twice before purchasing a product. Is that mentioned? Which does that fall into of the two, supposedly these? Now, is that budgeting or techniques for... What did I just read?
While money management seems a tough job, parents and teachers at schools can make students understand how they can manage the money they hold. Firstly, children spend most of their time with their parents since birth. Therefore, if parents had shown them successful examples of money management, children will adopt those techniques. Secondly, educational institutions, both elementary and secondary schools, are responsible to equip pupils with life skills. Primary schools can include relevant stories, teaching its readers on the benefits of management. Similarly, secondary schools can incorporate relevant subjects. All this will ensure that children do understand from outset methods of effective money management. Managing finances is challenging for some people. There is a plethora of skills.
Okay, Norman, good job here. You got, you mentioned money management that was in the first paragraph. Good connection. That's what I'm looking for. Parents and teachers at schools, as opposed to teachers in, like kung fu places? Can make students understand. Why do I call that that's a lexical error? Because there's a word for teachers making, there's a word for that. It's a teach. All right. Schools can teach students how they can manage the money they hold. How about just their money? Okay, now, firstly, what do we use firstly for? When we say there are several things, okay, or in this case, parents and teachers can teach students how they can manage their money. Firstly, they can teach them this. Well, sort of. But firstly, children, don't need the capital C, spend most of their time with their parents since birth. Of course they do. What's this stating the obvious? Therefore, if parents had shown them successful techniques of money management, well, they didn't, children will adopt those techniques. Okay, this is what's called it's a conditional sentence, which is good. Conditionals will get you points for your grammar. Where should I sit now? Over here. But where's my things? No, come back. Oh, right. Of course. Teachers and schools. Wordy, their money. Incorrect connector. Right, this is right. Yeah. Third conditional is an unreal situation in the past. Therefore, if parents had shown them successful examples of money management, then the children would have adopted, would be the words there, and it would be talking about, something in the past, but we're not talking about the past. Okay, secondly, so parents should be role models for managing money. Okay, that's a good reason why no, it's not. It's almost a technique. Why? Because parents are primarily responsible for their children's behavior. And it's at childhood that we learn some of our basic life skills. Just like they taught to be taught how to be nice to people, how not to yell at people on the internet. My parents never taught me that. They learn life skills such as money management at home first. Okay. And not every school, particularly primary schools, is not an educational institution. An institution is an organization that has a long history and a bureaucracy, and is self-continuing and is often considered to be permanent. It's an institution. That's a school. Different thing. Okay, universities can be institutions. Who is responsible? Okay, so let me get to this next one. Okay. Primary schools. So educational institutions, both elementary and secondary schools, are responsible to equip people with life skills. Pupils. Okay, so is that your support? So you say here, schools need to teach them how to manage money. Why? Because schools should do it. Primary schools can include relevant stories, teaching its readers, the book's readers, on the benefits of management. Forgot a word there, money management. Similarly, well, the only thing that's similar here is the fact that it doesn't fit. There's a question asked, how should schools teach children how to do this? No. It doesn't ask how. You might want to be more specific. What I mean is, what type of stories? What types of subjects? From outset? Okay, methods of effective money management. Aha! You missed a big chance here to connect the who is responsible question back to your first question. Remember the first question? If you mentioned what those methods were, then it would have created coherence and cohesion. Oh, I included that in that one there. Okay, so to conclude, although managing finances is difficult, one can manage them if funds are properly budgeted and spent wisely. Oh, that's a good sentence. Next generation. Next generation is an adjective, which means like cutting edge. Next generation.
The next generation in IELTS preparation. Teacher Joko.
It's an adjective, and it's really a marketing term. It's not a group of people. That would be the next generation or whatever. Okay, can learn all this from parents and schools. How about should learn all this? That was the question. So two-part questions are tough. You've got Norman. I haven't seen you around here, so just to let you know, I was a little upset today because I found out someone I've been working with for some time didn't achieve the goal that they wanted. Didn't get that 7.
Why? I taught him everything I knew. I did.
Thought I did. I hope you learned something.